For this mock exercise, we're going to take a look at inventory cost management, and we're going to use a tool called EOQ, Economic Order Quantity, and we're going to use a case called the clothes center to highlight the calculation of EOQ. So let's look at the question. So EOQ, this is a company called Clothes Center, and they sell fabrics to a wide variety of industrial and consumer users. One of the products it carries is a denim cloth used in manufacturing of jeans and carrying bags. So the supplier for the denim clothes will pay all incoming freight. So freight is essentially the supplier pays for it. Okay, so it's probably factored into the cost already, cost of buying. Now, no incoming inspection of denim is necessary because supplier has a track record of delivering high-quality merchandise. The purchasing offer of the clothes center has collected the following information. So here's the annual demand. Okay, so if you remember EOQ, the formula for EOQ, because the first part is asking us to calculate EOQ. So first of all, what is economic order quantity? But before we even answer that, let's understand what are the costs associated with selling a product. So what I have here is a list of basically 5 different costs associated with selling a product. So the first one is purchasing. So the cost of goods acquired from suppliers, including the freight cost. So that's ability to perhaps a department. It could include the cost of the department of sourcing the products, perhaps. Now, the ordering cost is cost of preparing and issuing purchase order, receiving and inspecting. So it's not only the purchasing department, but it's also the receiving department in your warehouse, the cost of receiving and inspecting the items included in the order, and the matching invoices, receipt, purchase order, and delivery time to make payment. So this would be, this may include your accounts payable department, so any activities related to your accounts payable department. This will be your warehouse department, warehouse staff, and obviously this is your purchasing department. So there are multiple different departments, and the idea behind here is this is the group that would essentially, once it was sourced, once we've already ordered it, as soon as the actual process of ordering and getting it in, inspecting, put it into the warehouse, labeling it, recording it in the books, in the tracking mechanism for inventory. And in addition, you have your accounts payable department who would actually do a matching of purchase order to the actual invoice, to the receiving document, to make sure that all is properly accounted for so that payment can be made. Now, in this question, you'll see that for the clothes center, there'll be no freight cost because that's already part of the supplier's cost. The supplier actually pays for all incoming freight. But in some questions, you might have to include that in your purchasing cost because you might have to pay for your own freight. Or perhaps the company who's buying could have their own delivery truck or delivery employees who comes and picks up the supplies from their supplier. So you got to make sure when you read the question, you got to know what some of these costs may or may not be included. The third element of cost associated with buying a product or selling a service could be a carrying cost. And these are costs of holding inventory of goods for sale. And these include things such as opportunity cost of the investment tied up in inventory, the cost associated with storage, rent, insurance, obsolescence, and spoilage. So think about this. If the company decided to warehouse part of the inventory And again, it's all about inventory management. So holding that inventory means you're taking cash away from perhaps generating some sort of return into an asset that's sitting there waiting for a customer to buy. So that's why we need to also factor in the carrying cost, the opportunity cost of the investment, the cash that was tied up to the inventory, which could be interest income, right? The interest that we would have earned on that cash that's sitting as ending inventory. And of course, things like storage and obsolescence and all of these things. And oftentimes, companies will not properly count for these, right? So they would have a hard time accounting for these. And in fact, the carrying charges are probably much bigger than what companies or management estimates are. Stock out cost. This cost here is cost in which the company does run out of a particular item and there's a customer demand. The company must either act quickly to meet that demand or suffer costs of not meeting it. So if a customer wants to order 10,000 units, you can only supply 9, you might have to go and buy 1,000 units of that product from your competitor just to satisfy that customer order. And that purchase of 1,000 from your competitor is going to obviously be at a premium. So that would be what we call a stock out cost, or we need to calculate how much that we're going to lose that customer. What's the contribution margin and future sale potential of that customer if we end up losing it because we don't have the product to deliver. And quality costs, we saw this in the previous examples and videos that these are the 4 different categories of quality, and this is all about making sure that our product is in conformance with any government regulations or perhaps customer satisfaction or specification. Now, in the EOQ model, we're only really dealing with these 3. We're not going to include stock out costs or quality costs. And here's the formula for the EOQ. So before we can answer the closed center, we need to understand what is EOQ. So EOQ is just a model, a simplified version of a model, which allows us to determine the optimal quantity. What is the level of inventory that we need to always have on hand or to order, given a specific assumption? And these are the assumptions. We're going to assume that only ordering and carrying costs are the costs incorporated in this formula. The 2, we have to assume that the same quantity is ordered each time at the reorder point. So every time we call the supplier, we're going to order the same amount of quantity. The 3rd assumption is demand, purchase order lead time, ordering costs, and carrying costs are known with certainty. So we have to make the assumption that we know the demand. So we know that's going to be a very difficult assumption to meet, particularly the demand, the first one, the demand. Because we don't know when our customers are going to buy. We don't know how many they're going to buy. We only know our past, but we don't know exactly what's ahead of us. So this demand is a very important estimate or prediction or estimate management needs to make. Purchase order per unit are unaffected by the quantity ordered. So in other words, purchasing cost per unit, that means that we probably would have a supplier, a contract where we buy X amount of number of units from them to get the best price. So oftentimes there's probably a purchase agreement that's governed by this assumption. No stock out occurs, and of course the EOQ ignores quality costs. So it's really a simplified version of those 5 different categories of cost. And here's the formula. EOQ is the square root of 2 times the demand times the ordering cost divided by the carrying cost. So let's take a look at this question. So we know that in answering to calculate the EOQ for clothes, we need to determine the formula, right? 2dP over C. Now, the demand we can see is 20,000 meters. Okay? And the P is the ordering cost for purchase order is $160. The C is, we call the carrying cost, right? And that carrying cost, we know, is we're told that it's 20% of the cost per purchase cost, which is $8 per meter. So let's plug into the formula. We see that EOQ equals square root of 2 times 20,000 times 160 divided by $1.60, and EOQ is 2,000 yards. So that's how much they should be ordering each time they place an order, is 2,000 yards. The next question says, calculate the number of orders that must be placed each year. So the number of orders is the demand over EOQ. So what the demand, annual demand is 20,000. We're supposed to order 2,000 yards. Means that we're going to place 10 orders per year. Number 3 says recalculate the reorder point. So what is the reorder point? So let's take a look at that. Reorder point is basically depicted by this illustration, that you've got 1,000 units. That's the number of units that you need to keep in hand. And we know that it takes 2 weeks lead time to order. So the time you place the call, the time it gets in, it takes 2 weeks. So what we've got to figure out is at what level of units of quantity should it go down so that we can reorder. That's essentially what we're trying to figure out. And the formula for the reorder point is this. It's the quantity level of inventory on hand that triggers a purchase order, so number of units sold per time times purchased order lead time. So let's take a look at that. So how many demands do we have per day? So the first part of the calculation is the demand per working day. So the annual demand is 20,000 divided by how many working days are there? We're told that there's 50 weeks a year times 5 weeks, 5 days a week. So it's 20,000 divided by 250, or 80 yards per day. Now we're going to multiply this by 5 days to give us 400 yards per week. Now we're told that the purchase lead time is 2 weeks. So since purchase lead time is 2 weeks, so reorder point is 400 yards times 2. So as soon as the inventory goes down by 800 yards, there's a trigger mechanism within the purchasing department to call the supplier and ask them to ship the amount of yards, 2,000 yards, to get down again for the next order. Okay? Thank you.